Power rarely collapses all at once. It erodes through moments of hesitation, indecision, and excuses that reveal the absence of real leadership. That is precisely where Speaker Mike Johnson stands today. As the federal government edges deeper into a shutdown, Johnson has offered the nation not solutions but deflections, blaming Democrats, pointing to procedural delays, and presenting himself as a man trapped by circumstance rather than a leader capable of acting. The result is not governance, but paralysis, a Washington consumed by excuses, while the machinery of the state grinds toward crisis. This is not just another budget standoff. It is a moment that exposes the fragility of political leadership at the highest levels. Johnson inherited a fractured House majority and a party at war with itself. But instead of rising to the challenge, he has leaned on the oldest political strategy in Washington, blaming everyone else. He has spoken of democratic obstruction while refusing to bring bipartisan measures to the floor of process while the government lurches toward economic harm, and of principles while offering no realistic path forward. It is a performance of leadership without the substance. As the crisis deepens, the consequences of this paralysis grow more severe. Workers are preparing for missed paychecks. Critical agencies are scaling down operations, and markets are growing uneasy. And yet, Johnson seems to view delay not as danger, but as leverage. He is not trying to end the standoff. He is trying to survive it, and in doing so, he is turning one of the most powerful offices in the nation into a platform for excuses. This is not leadership under siege. It is leadership in retreat. Leadership reveals itself in moments of crisis when the stakes are highest. Excuses speak louder than words. Mike Johnson has chosen to meet a historic government shutdown not with vision or resolve, but with an endless stream of explanations meant to shift responsibility elsewhere. He blames Democrats for obstruction, the Senate for inaction, and timing for his own failure to lead. Each justification is carefully crafted to avoid the one thing that would expose the truth, admitting that the Speaker of the House has chosen political survival over governing. His rhetoric follows a familiar pattern. Johnson claims he wants a responsible solution while refusing to bring compromise bills to the floor. He insists the Senate must act first, as though the House he leads has no role in averting disaster. He invokes procedural rules as though they were immutable laws of nature, not tools he can wield. In the dark theater of political crisis, these excuses are designed not to solve the problem, but to conceal the choice not to act. They turn paralysis into performance. But the danger of this strategy goes far beyond one man's reputation. Every day, Johnson delays. The crisis hardens. Federal agencies move from contingency planning to shutdown operations. Familles depend on government paychecks, face uncertainty. Essential programs inch closer to suspension. And yet, in this moment of growing instability, Johnson appears less concerned with the country's well-being than with avoiding blame. Excuses are not leadership. They are its hollow echo. And as the lights of governance dim, those echoes grow louder. And for some leaders, paralysis is failure. For Mike Johnson, it has become a strategy. By refusing to take decisive action as the shutdown worsens, Johnson is not simply stalling, he is consolidating leverage. Each day the government remains frozen, the pressure builds not only on Democrats, but on moderates within his own party. The longer the standoff drags on, the more Johnson can present inaction as bargaining power, a way to force concessions without ever offering a concrete plan of his own. It is power exercised through absence, leadership defined by the vacuum. It creates, this approach is not new. It draws from a cynical understanding of modern politics. Chaos can be a weapon. Johnson has calculated that the spectacle of dysfunction benefits him politically, at least in the short term. It allows him to placate the far-right flank that thrives on conflict while portraying himself as a principled actor trapped by circumstances, by framing the crisis as something beyond his control. He shields himself from responsibility even as he deepens the very crisis he claims to lament. But there is a cost to this kind of power play. Every day of paralysis weakens the credibility of the institution he leads. It normalizes dysfunction as a tool of governance, and it teaches the public and his own caucus that power need not be exercised to be effective, only withheld. This is how temporary crises harden into enduring patterns. When leadership becomes synonymous with obstruction, government ceases to function as a public trust and becomes a stage for manufactured brinkmanship. For those in Washington, the shutdown may be a political chess match. For millions of Americans, it is a lived reality of fear and disruption. Behind every procedural delay and every carefully crafted excuse from Speaker Mike Johnson is a growing human cost. Federal employees are facing missed paychecks, forcing families to choose between rent, groceries, and bills. Essential services from food assistance to housing programs are slowing or halting entirely. Airport security officers, public health workers, and veterans services staff are being told to work without pay or wait indefinitely for answers that never seem to come. These are not abstractions. They are school teachers who depend on federal programs to keep their classrooms supplied, single parents relying on SNAP benefits to feed their children, and small business owners waiting for loans that have been frozen mid-process. The cost of inaction ripples outward from government offices to local economies, from households to entire communities. It does not care about political strategy or talking points. It lands on real people, and yet inside the Capitol, this pain is treated as leverage, a pressure point to be manipulated rather than a crisis to be solved. Johnson's refusal to act decisively turns the suffering of ordinary citizens into bargaining chips in a political struggle he hopes to control. But every day of delay chips away at public faith in government's most basic promise that it will be there when people need it. Excuses may buy time for politicians. For families, they buy nothing at all. Shutdowns are not new in Washington, but this one carries a different weight. In past crises, from the Clinton era standoff in 1995 to the 2018 shutdown under Trump, there was, however fragile, a path toward resolution. Deals were made, leaders stepped forward, and governing eventually resumed. What distinguishes this moment is not just its severity, but the way it is being weaponized. Mike Johnson is not navigating this shutdown with the intent to end it. He is using it as a tool to extract power, stall accountability, and reshape the rules of the game. Historical precedents show that shutdowns, though painful, have typically ended when political costs outweighed partisan advantage. But Johnson is gambling on something different, that dysfunction itself can be turned into a form of strength. By allowing the crisis to drag on, he positions himself as the one figure who can end it on his terms, even though he has done little to prevent it. It's a performance designed to transform inaction into leverage. The danger of this approach is profound. It breaks the precedent that governance, even in conflict, must ultimately serve the public good. Instead, it replaces it with a new model in which governing is suspended to advance partisan agendas. If this strategy succeeds, shutdowns will no longer be extraordinary events. They will become routine weapons in a permanent state of political siege. Johnson's power play is not just about this moment. It's about changing the way power itself is exercised in Washington. Trust is the most fragile currency in a democracy. It is not written into law, but everything depends on it. Trust that leaders will act in moments of crisis. Trust that government will function even under strain. Trust that those in power will put the country above partisan calculation. Mike Johnson's handling of the shutdown has shattered that trust piece by piece. His excuses have turned into symbols of a deeper disillusionment, a growing sense among ordinary citizens that those who govern are more interested in performance than in responsibility. The erosion is not abstract. Federal workers hear leadership talk of principles while they prepare to miss their rent. Small businesses that rely on government contracts hear speeches about fiscal discipline while their invoices remain unpaid. Veterans, families, and seniors encounter frozen programs wrapped in excuses about procedure and timing. Each unfulfilled promise chips away at the belief that the state will stand behind its commitments. What remains is cynicism, the most corrosive force in a democracy. This is the cost of a political culture built on deflection. When excuses become normalized at the highest levels, accountability dissolves. When accountability dissolves, trust collapses. And when trust collapses, democracy becomes a hollow performance rather than a functioning system. Johnson may view delay as strategy, but to the public, it is betrayal. In moments like this, leadership isn't measured by who wins the blame game. It is measured by who is willing to act when the nation cannot afford more silence. Silence is not neutral in moments of crisis. It is a choice, And in Washington today, Speaker Mike Johnson's silence is not the quiet of strategy, but the language of surrender, surrender to dysfunction, to fear of his own party's extremes, to a politics that mistakes paralysis for principle. As the shutdown grinds on each day without decisive action compounds the harm, but more dangerously, each day of silence signals that this form of governance crisis by choice, excuse by habit is acceptable. It turns dysfunction into precedent. In a functioning democracy, leadership is measured not only by the decisions made, but by the refusal to hide behind convenient narratives. Johnson's unwillingness to lead does not merely prolong the crisis. It corrodes the very expectation that those in power must act in the public interest. His silence has become a mirror reflecting a deeper rot, a political system where the suffering of millions is background noise to a partisan struggle for control. The cost of silence is not paid in headlines. It is paid by families who cannot cover their bills, by communities watching services collapse, by citizens losing faith in institutions that no longer seem capable of serving them. And once that faith is gone, it is hard to recover. This is the danger of allowing silence to define governance. It teaches people to expect nothing, and in doing so, it prepares the ground for a future where nothing is all they receive.